Hey there! Today I want to tell you about the Hillsdale K-12 Classical Education Podcast. This unique show explains how children benefit from an American classical education. Whether you're a teacher, student, or parent, you'll find something of value on the show. You'll hear from teachers and administrators from schools around the country, as well as Hillsdale professors and friends who are leading the effort to revive the American tradition of K-12 education. When you listen, you'll learn all about classical education, what it is, how to teach it, and why it matters today. And there are dozens of back episodes on specific topics, like teaching Singapore math, reading great books, and even understanding how athletics is critical to a child's development. Listen every Monday on podcast.hillsdale.edu. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
I'm here with Caroline Greb to interview her. I would love to just start by asking, who are you? What do you do? What's your story? And I'd love to hear how you got to Hillsdale as well.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be able to think back on just such fond college memories. And they're so much a part of what I'm doing now. So especially just meaningful for me. I'll start way back before I came to Hillsdale. So I actually graduated high school early and then for a few years danced professionally in a ballet company. And then after some injuries, didn't want to keep dancing and had known about Hillsdale since I was in middle school because of a classical school that I went to for a few years. And I came to the end. It was almost April when I applied. I think it was maybe March. So it was definitely getting close to the admissions deadline. And I didn't really expect to go to college full time since I had always planned on dancing for a while and then sort of just, doing classes online on the side. So coming to Hillsdale was a bit of a surprise for me, but definitely sort of the Lord opening the right door for me to come. So it ended up being just a real blessing. The first, I would say, year I was there, I really did not know what I was doing. As far as my focus, which is a great advantage of the liberal arts, just getting to try a lot of things, really fell in love with English and then thought I would be a marketing major just because I was like, that sounds practical and useful. But I remember fitting in a drawing class my second semester of my first year. And it was the first year that Professor Suarez was teaching. And so we were one of his first classes. I was one of his first students he saw all the way through graduation. So that was just really special. So anyways, took a drawing class, remember leaving and it actually changing the way that I was seeing and then just really being compelled to keep doing classes. So by that point, I was thinking I was going to be an English major and then just started to fill in a bunch of art classes in the margins. And my roommate at the time was like, Caroline, it's very obvious. Don't you think you should just be an art major? Which sort of rocked my world because I don't know why I hadn't really seen it for myself before. And then from there on out, I really just took as many art classes as I could fit in. Ended up being president of the art honorarium, was involved in a couple other ways there. But by the time I was a senior, since I was technically a transfer student, but I still did 4 full years. So by the time I was a senior, I actually married my husband and we were married for my senior year. And then my first baby, my daughter, was born in August, the year after I graduated in May. So I walked the stage. I think I was 6 or 7 months pregnant. So a very unconventional sort of student life, but it was really, sweet for me. And since then, we actually lived in Hillsdale for another year after I graduated. Ethan, my husband, worked for the K-12 education department. So we got to raise Thea there for her first year, which was just really special. We got really involved with College Baptist and I got to keep sort of dropping in on art classes whenever I could. In the evenings would go draw. But since my kids were born, just continued to paint. I'm a very driven person. I definitely prefer to be busy. And so if I have a spare minute, painting has just been a really sweet thing to continue to do. I never really imagined not being able to make things, even though that's looked different in different seasons. So when Thea was first born, I was still doing some freelance graphic design work. And then when she was born, I felt like, okay, I can definitely just do painting now. So it would just be like during nap times. And then I did the farmer's market there for a while, and started selling prints. And then we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, 2.5 years ago now, which is crazy because it has gone so fast. And my son, so our second child, was born May of 2023. So he's coming up on 2. So I would say in the last like 6 months, now that he's a little bit older and Thea is coming up on 4, which is crazy,
Wow.
I've been able to just have a more consistent discipline of they both nap at the same time. That's like when I run to the studio and just sort of try to manage household tasks at other times. So this is really protected as my work time. So it looked a little bit different in the beginning of our move here because we didn't think we would be here permanently. But I've now been able to really connect to the art community here, which is hustling and bustling. There's so much going on. There's a lot of different groups doing different things. So there's like a art residency that also has figure drawing and portrait drawing classes that you can just drop in on. So I've met some really cool artists through that. And then working on
So
working
sorry
on
about that.
applying. Is that okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. Working on applying to some galleries, and then I'm like a part of an artist guild, and there's just a lot of cool opportunities here and some really talented work. So it's been fun to feed off of other people and sort of be in more of a community environment. Definitely something that is harder as a mom with young kids to, get that, especially during the day, but there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And then this year, what has been just a real treat, I applied for this program that's local to Charlotte, called Art Pop. And what they do is partner with media advertising agencies and help a group of 20 emerging artists every year to get their artwork, basically just all over the place. So they partner with advertising agencies that most of them are like billboards. So if you drive around the Charlotte area right now, like I have a painting that's up on billboards and other digital displays. And then they even have partnerships with agencies in like Times Square. So right now my painting is actually up in Times Square, which is very surreal. So I do feel like I'm starting to gain some momentum, but really the fact that I'm just painting is, a success to me. And that's sort of my goal in the next 10 years. Like 10 years from now, I would love to be, painting a lot bigger and selling a lot more. But like if I'm painting, then I'm, that's a success in my mind. So yeah, it's just been wild to watch it unfold.
I'm curious to know, so you said you took a drawing class, you're planning to be an English major. What connected you to art in the medium of drawing? I mean, you had just been dancing. So how did that transition go for you, and what drew you to art on like a canvas medium?
It's a good question. The short answer is that it just felt like a more natural way for me to communicate. And I think part of that is because dancing, I was I was trained to be on stage in front of people, but I never had to speak. And so I think I always loved words. I've like carried a book around as my comfort object since I could read in kindergarten. So I've always loved, reading, but I feel like writing and sort of putting my own thoughts in words takes a lot more work than drawing or painting, or even I think there's a similarity for me with dancing, that it's just a little bit more natural. I feel a little bit less shy when somebody can like look at a painting and they aren't, directly looking at me or directly hearing my voice. Not that I do that sometimes too. So, just a mix. But I do think I remember going to the drawing class and then walking out, and we had just been learning about negative space. And negative space is like when you draw, when you're thinking, at least visually, drawing the space around an object instead of the object itself. So it helps you actually with a lot of accuracy, because then you're training your eye not to think like, oh, I'm drawing a chair, but you're thinking about the space around it. So we were learning about that. And then I walked out and I saw Central Hall, and instead of seeing it, I saw the negative space, and it was amazing to me that my actual, like optically, my view of the world had changed. And so then I just, even theologically started to sort of think about that, and just saw how powerful it was that like if we really are more careful to not make assumptions about the way that we're seeing things, we can actually, see them as they are and not be so quick to assume what we think is true of the world around us. So for me, it was also a very sort of deeply theological experience to then begin realizing, wow, the way that I have seen the world is actually not all that accurate, because drawing is all about not drawing what you think, like not assuming that all water is blue, but drawing what you see. And then often, when you're painting, water is anything but blue, and a shape is anything but what you think it should be. So that just whole experience, I think, really fascinated me. And it also, I think, speaks to a lot to my personality. I just was a very rushed person, I think very perfectionistic as a dancer, and just had to always like be performing, and just, I think developed a lot of habits where I didn't know how to slow down and know how to just observe and be patient. And so drawing, just, I think the process I really enjoy too. The sort of like nitty gritty, it's slow work, but it's really rewarding.
How did you build a career around this? Now you said that you're part of an artist guild and part of the Art Pop program. How did you get there?
Yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes I ask myself the same thing. Sometimes people, you're not the first person who has asked me this question. And I think from the outside, sometimes I need to like step outside myself and realize, oh, like I am, like things are actually happening, which are really cool. But I think from the inside, it feels a lot of things to have happened outside of my control. Like the Lord, just in his providence, has been kind to work certain things in a certain way that they are happening. And I also think part of it, which I know so many artists feel, is just a feeling of like imposter syndrome. Like to even say, yes, I have an art career feels almost, outlandish for me to say that of myself, even though I know that's what, you and like a bulk of people think of, sort of how life looks. So I think from the inside, it's just a lot more simple and humble, and that I like come into my studio every day and I paint, even if I'm not feeling like I know how to paint. I just texted my husband last week because I finally painted something that I was like, oh, I really like this. Like, I'm actually happy with this. And it had been maybe 2 or 3 weeks of just like fighting with paint and feeling like, oh, I'm going to throw that one away again. So I think how I've made, or how I am currently making, I feel like that's a better, it's actively in the making, making a career out of it, is that I just like do the work. I think even I am like tempted to give up so many times, and I feel like I question myself all the time, like, is this really worth it? I'm doing all this work. And to me it is, because I get to keep painting things. And then I have the days where I paint something I really love. And I'm like, okay, yeah, those 3 weeks of feeling like I'm a disaster were so worth it, because now I made something that at least I believe is truly beautiful. And ultimately I'm driven by like the theological undergirdings of seeking truth, beauty, and goodness, and how that works itself out through paint. So yeah, I feel like, it's just been baby steps. When we lived in Hillsdale, I did the farmer's market. We lived in the Wedge building downtown, and the farmer's market was only a block away. So I was like, I can do that. That's a block away. And so I just, focused. That was my like one big goal for the year. It was like do markets. And that was a way to, sell prints, but also to get my name out there and sort of build a reputation in the community, not just as a student, but as an art graduate. And then when we moved here, I just try to, keep in mind a handful of goals every year. And so the first year we moved here, I honestly did not have much time to devote, because my husband was full-time in seminary and working from home. I taught, and then I was also an editor for a magazine, and, painting was like, if I have time. And so that year I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to release 2 collections, and that will be my goal. And then certain things like this year, my goal has been more galleries, and I've been able to sign a contract, or a couple, for galleries this year. So just like setting up little markers of success for myself. And then I think things have just been able to slowly build, but it is slow. And what's hard is, I think with the imposter syndrome, is I know that I could be like, I have 50 other ideas of things I could be doing, but I'm finite and I can't do all of those right now. But that's okay, because I'm an artist for a lifetime and not just for this year. And so just sort of learning how to pace myself to know what's actually feasible and what benefits growth. And I think what I've learned now being further out from undergrad is just like sort of how to prioritize things within. I'm not a business savvy person. So that I would say has been a learning curve. So trying to prioritize, certain things. And one that was a huge success was this last year I did a calendar for the first time, and just really went well. And I think that'll become a yearly goal for me. So I already know what this next year is going to be. And I actually might, if I have time this afternoon, start one of the paintings just because I'm excited about the idea. But that was something that I was like, okay, this is a great way to reach a demographic that I'm not reaching with just selling original work that for some people, is out of their price range. So short answer, I just kept painting.
Consistency is key. That's what people say. So that
Yes,
that makes a lot of
it
sense.
is.
You said it feels strange to tell people that you do art. Did you ever face opposition to starting a career in art? People telling you that this isn't a smart career move or, a major to pursue? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I would say I'm a ton of external voices saying that, but definitely met a lot of internal voices. And it's funny. So, I mean, since I was an art major, I did a graphic design minor because in my head, I was like, that's still a lot more practical, easier to get a job, that sort of thing. And then after I graduated, I continued doing freelance graphic design alongside painting. And then until this was last week. So as of last week, the only thing I'm doing is painting and having an art career. And that has still just been an internal struggle. But last week I stepped down from an editorial position with a magazine that I adore and I will still be cheering on. It's like a Christian arts and culture magazine. And I will still be cheering them on, but it came to a point where I was like, okay, I think this deserves my full attention. And I'm, gaining the confidence to really say this is my full-time career. But I think it wasn't as much anybody else saying, oh, this isn't a smart career choice as much as it was an internal voice saying, it's really hard to make it out there. And there's a lot of artists and what's going to, be different about me than the next person. And also knowing that I'm not the most, naturally talented painter. There were other students in my class that were much better than me and still are. But that doesn't mean there isn't a space for my voice and, my own vision. And so just learning how to be confident in that, I think has been a learning curve, but has been a good exercise in just learning.
What helped you kind of get rid of the imposter syndrome, and how did you end up just trusting the Lord that he's going to direct you to where you need to be? What are some things that you did to help get those thoughts out of your head and realize that you do actually have something to contribute, even though you don't feel like you're the best one in the room or the class?
Yeah, I would say it's still an ongoing battle. I mean, and it's funny. So even within this art pop program, they call that a class, an art pop class of 2025. Just some of the first conversations I had with some of the other artists are like, wow, I finally feel like I can, say I'm a legitimate artist. And some of them have been doing work for a long time. Some of them are in their 60s. It's amazing. And so I think it's just to decide if it matters to me or not, to feel like, I'm really important when I know, first of all, in the eyes of God, I am his child and I am also small. And just holding those two things together. But also learning that, I think everybody does have something unique to say. And just learning what is unique about your own voice. I think I'm still refining, what my work is trying to say. But I also just like to paint things that are there. And so sometimes it's just painting the thing that's there, and that's okay too. So
you have two beautiful children. How do you navigate being a business owner and a full-time artist, but also a full-time mother? How has that been for you? You said you walked across the stage at graduation, with your first child. So how has that been, and what is it like to navigate that? And what advice would you have for other women who are looking to do the same?
Yeah, good question. And this is probably one of my most asked questions, at least from Hillsdale students. Yeah, I think it's just looked different in each season. And so first, it's only been possible because, Ethan, my husband, is extremely supportive. And even on the days where I'm like, why don't I just not paint anymore? He's like, no, you really need to. So that has been, I think, a huge reason. And also just his job is very, like he has a good work-life balance now in this stage of life. And so that's made it possible. Like I know some of my mom friends, their husbands work, 13-hour days. And if that was the case, I'm sure things would look different. And so I think that's been a huge factor. It's also really fun that he's actually a creative director. So he's a professional graphic designer by trade. And so he has been able to give input on things and I can give input on his work. And so that's just been a way that I think it's made me want to keep going, is because he's doing his own creative work. And it's just very much a part of our lives. In a newborn stage, I don't think I pick up a paintbrush for a long time. And that's just something that I've learned is part of the rhythm, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean I'm not being creative. And so it often has looked like I'll pour my creativity into different things like cooking or decorating our house, or even if I just have a minute to sketch, I'll go outside and sketch. If anything, I feel like they've enhanced my artistic life, because now, like, my daughter is drawing now and it's so hilarious and so fun. She drew me earlier today and I look crazy and so chaotic, which I was like, it's honestly accurate sometimes. And so it's just fun to see their creativity come out. And it's true what people say just about getting to relearn how to see the world through the eyes of your child. Like, you just see all this wonder again and all these things that you take for granted that they're learning. I think they've just really enriched my artistic practice when they find joy in such simplicity, and also learning to teach them things in simple terms that, you can make it so much more complicated than it really needs to be. So I'm starting to teach my daughter how to read too, and just learning how to simplify things, and even to teach her truth from scripture, and how it's just a good exercise to simplify that. And then to see that influence my artistic practice has been really fun. But from a practical standpoint, yeah, I'm home with them all the time. Like, they don't go to daycare or any sort of childcare unless I lead a Bible study one morning of the week. And so, they go during then. But so I'm home with them, and I take care of our house. So they're very involved. Like, we usually don't do a bunch of crazy outings. And then we clean up and put away lunch before they nap. And so the house is set before they both go down to nap around 1:15, and then I bolt to the studio. So that's just like a really good rhythm we found, in which has been our rhythm for, probably a year now. But it's all dependent on naps, and Pei is getting to an age where she's not napping as much. So then that'll be a new season that we have to figure out, that she just doesn't, I don't have my afternoons all to myself. And what does it look like for her to draw next to me, or to do a different activity while I'm in the studio? And then I do sometimes use evenings and weekends, especially for things like, going to a drawing class, or sometimes I'll have meetings and things like that. But yeah, it's been really fun. They actually came with me a couple weeks ago. I had to deliver a couple quite large paintings to a gallery. And so I was like, okay, you're coming with me. And they were so excited, and we got to look around, and Thea now is sort of understanding, oh, Mama, you're in a gallery. Let's go look at your artwork. And she's been in so many museums in the 3 years of her life that we've gotten many a side eye from security guards when they've been running around a museum. But so far, no paintings have been harmed. But I am waiting for the day where she draws on something I've painted. But I don't know. It's just been sweet. But it is a sort of a balancing act. And I think my advice would be to just always sort of be reevaluating. And so that's just been consistent in our marriage, reevaluating, what's working for a season. And if it's not working, figuring out something that either has to go, or now I feel like we're in a season of a little bit more freedom, where I'm I can do a program like Art Pop because I have the space, but it would not have been a good thing to do 2 years ago or a year ago. And so just reevaluating to keep, I think it was Lewis when he said, keeping the first things first, and, the second things second. So first things are my marriage, my family, and then second things are painting. And that's just like a good reality. It doesn't mean it's not important. It just means that's sort of how the focus is. But yeah, I've even wrestled in different seasons. Like, what does it look like? Like, should I even be working at all? And that is just a question that I think everybody has to ask themselves. And like, there isn't a prescriptive answer, but something that's been helpful for me to sort of discern in each season if it's a good thing is if my work is an extension of the home or if it's something that's taking me away from the home. And so just because of the nature of like an artistic practice, I do feel like it's a really beautiful extension of the home. But in a busier season, it might be something that's detracting, my focus from really taking care of my family the best way. And so that will be, a hard decision, but it might just mean that I don't paint every day, or I do nothing, or I do one thing a month, and that's enough. So I think just, making sure your priorities are straight are what's sort of helped me, and being comforted in the fact that like it's not every season is not forever. Like newborns aren't newborns forever. They eventually sleep through the night and they eventually aren't, they use their words and don't just cry. And so knowing that things will change, I think is also comfort, because it means that the season you're in, if it feels like you don't have enough time to do what you want to do, or then like there will be a time when that changes. So,
well, we're almost out of time, but I would love to ask for anyone, for women specifically who are looking to get into art, what is your biggest piece of advice you would give them as they look to the future after graduating, trying to start a career in art? What's your biggest piece of advice?
Maybe it sounds redundant, but I would just say, like, just keep doing it and don't be afraid to throw things away. I have thrown away so many things that never see the light of day, just because it's just part of the practice to be able to do it. For me, it's so frustrating to think, okay, I have 2 or 3 hours. I want to sit down, and if I don't make a masterpiece, like, why am I even trying? Like, why devote the time to it if it's not just going to automatically be what I want it to be? But I think you have to go through that to get to the better things. And so that's my piece of advice. I would say not to be scared away when things, like you can't draw as well as you want to draw because your progress is slow. So just putting in the work, keep trying. Yeah. And then I guess my second piece of advice, which goes hand in hand, is to try to find some classes to go to in person. Even as an introvert, it is very beneficial to be in a group setting where you can feed off of other artists and sort of watch them work. It helps you get new ideas. And then to have somebody, maybe like a friend who's also an artist, that you can talk to and sort of give feedback to back and forth. So like I have a really good friend at church who's also a professional artist, and we consider each other coworkers, even though we're both alone in our houses while our kids are napping. We can send pictures back and forth and say, like, what would you change here? What do you think needs fixed? So just not isolating yourself, like putting in the work, but also like doing that in community, I think is really helpful, to be able to just have a good sense of where you are and where your work maybe needs to improve and how to focus your time.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been Caroline Greb on Beyond the Bubble podcast with Career Services. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for having me.
It's no secret that Americans are more divided than ever. And it's not just over what policies will improve our great country. No, it's over whether America is great at all, whether America deserves our love. That's why Imprimis is so important. Imprimis looks at the issues of the day from a constitutional perspective, reminding citizens always of our great heritage of liberty. For more than 50 years, Imprimis has featured speeches from the smartest conservative thinkers and writers at Hillsdale events. These days, Hillsdale publishes people like Molly Hemingway, Andy Puzder, Harmeet Dillon, and Chris Rufo. Over 6.4 million American households and businesses receive Imprimis absolutely free. And I urge you to sign up for it today at no charge. To get your free lifetime subscription, go to hillsdale.edu/lifetime right now. Or text the word Imprimis to 71844 and we'll send you a link to sign up for your free lifetime subscription. That's IMPRIMIS to 71844.